Before we begin, let the silence settle around you. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel crawling into the corners of the room. The story I'm about to tell wasn't meant to be spoken out loud. Someone carried it alone for far too long, afraid that saying it would make it real again. If a piece of their truth touches something you've kept buried, you can tell me in the comments. And if these quiet shadows keep pulling you back, you can like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Now don't move. Some memories wake up when they're listened to. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 now. I live in a small apartment just outside Toledo, Ohio, and I work a normal job with normal hours. I pay my bills on time. I don't do anything reckless anymore. But when I was 19, I babysat for a house that should have been empty. I still think about it almost every night. Not because I want to, because my mind doesn't give me a choice. I'm telling this now because I still babysit sometimes. Not for money, for friends, for family. And before I ever agree to it, I check listings. I check permits. I check Google Maps. I check everything. I didn't do that back then. That night was the first time I learned that some places don't let go of the people who were supposed to leave. At 19, my life was messy but simple. I was in community college. I worked part-time at a grocery store. I was desperate for extra cash. Babysitting was easy money, or at least it had always been. The message came through an online job board. Short, polite, no red flags I could see at the time. Need sitter for one night, 3 kids, cash, quiet house. I should have listened to the feeling I got when I saw the address. It wasn't familiar. That's not unusual. But when I typed it into my phone, the GPS hesitated. The route recalculated twice. That was the first sign something was wrong. I told myself it was nothing. Bad signal. Old neighborhood. I needed the money. The house sat at the end of a street that felt unfinished. Empty lots on both sides. No cars parked along the curb. Streetlights that flickered instead of glowing steadily. The air felt colder there, even though it was late summer. I remember sitting in my car for a full minute with the engine running, staring at the house. It was a 2-story place. White siding peeling in places. Porch light on. Curtains drawn. From the outside it looked lived in. Normal. But the silence around it was wrong. No dogs. No TV noise bleeding through walls. No neighbors. I should have driven away. I didn't. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately, like someone had been waiting with their hand on the knob. The woman who answered looked tired. Not creepy. Just exhausted. Late 30s, maybe. Hair pulled back too tight. Dark circles under her eyes. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Emily?" she asked. When I nodded, she stepped aside and waved me in. Her hand was cold when she shook mine. I remember that clearly. Cold like she'd been holding ice. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and something faintly sweet underneath it. Like rotting flowers. The air felt heavy, almost damp, even though the windows were closed. The living room was cluttered. Toys everywhere. Plastic blocks. Stuffed animals. A tiny shoe near the couch. Kids lived here. That much was obvious. 3 of them peeked at me from the hallway. 2 girls and a boy. All under 10. All watching me too quietly. "Kids, say hi," the woman said. They did. Soft voices. Perfect manners. Too perfect. She explained the rules quickly. Bedtime at 9. No screens after 8. Snacks in the pantry. Emergency number on the fridge. Her husband wasn't mentioned. That should have bothered me. Didn't. She handed me the cash up front. More than we'd agreed on. I noticed her hands were shaking when she did. "We won't be late," she said. "They're good kids." She didn't say where they were going. When they left, the door shut with a heavy sound, like the house exhaled. The kids didn't move for a moment. They just stood there watching the door. I laughed nervously and clapped my hands. "All right, who wants to pick the movie?" None of them answered right away. The oldest girl finally spoke. "We don't watch movies anymore." That was the second sign. I brushed it off. Some parents are strict. I followed the rules. We played a board game instead. The pieces were worn smooth, like they'd been handled 1,000 times. As we played, I noticed things. The clock on the wall wasn't ticking. The windows reflected more darkness than they should have. The hallway seemed longer when I looked at it directly. The kids kept glancing down it, like they were listening for something. I told myself I was tired, that my imagination was running wild. Around 8:30, the youngest boy tugged on my sleeve. His fingers were icy. "Will you stay if they don't come back?" he asked. The question hit me harder than it should have. "Of course," I said automatically. "They'll be back." He didn't look convinced. That was the third sign. When bedtime came, they went without a fight. Too easily. They climbed the stairs slowly, holding the railing like it might move if they didn't. As I tucked them in, I noticed their rooms were nearly bare. Beds, dressers, no posters, no personal photos, no sense of time passing. The oldest girl whispered something as I turned off the light. "It doesn't like when new people stay." My skin prickled. "What doesn't?" I asked. She shook her head. "You'll hear it." I didn't sleep on the couch like I usually did during babysitting jobs. I sat upright, every light on, phone in my hand. The house made sounds. Old houses do. I know that now. But this was different. Footsteps upstairs. Slow. Heavy. Not kid-sized. Breathing through the vents. Too deep. Too close. At one point, I smelled something metallic. Like pennies. Like blood. I checked the kids. They were all awake, eyes open in the dark. "It's coming closer," the boy whispered. My heart started racing. Fear became physical. My chest hurt. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I tried calling the number on the fridge. It didn't exist. That was when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then everything went quiet. No house sounds. No wind. No insects outside. Silence so thick it felt like pressure on my ears. And then I heard it. A dragging sound. From the basement. Slow. Deliberate. Like something heavy being pulled across concrete. I didn't believe in ghosts. Not then. But my body knew danger before my mind caught up. I grabbed the kids and locked us in the bathroom upstairs. I could feel vibrations through the floor. Each drag, closer. The door handle rattled. Something pressed against it from the other side. The smell of rot flooded the room. Old wood. Damp earth. Decay. The kids covered their ears. I screamed. I don't remember what I said. Prayers. Please. Apologies. Then, nothing. Morning light streamed through the window. Birds chirping. Cars passing in the distance. The house was gone. I don't mean abandoned. I mean gone. I was standing in an empty lot. Rubble. Broken boards. A demolition site surrounded by orange fencing. The kids were gone. The bathroom was gone. I was barefoot, shaking, covered in dust. Police said there had been no house there for months. Scheduled for demolition. Completed at dawn. No record of a family. No missing children reports. They asked if I was on drugs. I still smell that house sometimes. Old wood. Rot. Cold air. I don't know who I babysat. And I don't think I want to. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm 35 now. I live alone in a quiet duplex outside Spokane, Washington. I work nights at a logistics office where nothing unexpected ever happens. Spreadsheets. Numbers. Silence. I chose that life on purpose. Because years ago, when I was 24, I ignored a warning that should have stopped me cold. And every time I close my eyes now, I see my own reflection looking back at me from a mirror that wasn't empty. I'm telling this because I still avoid mirrors in unfamiliar houses. I still wash my hands in kitchen sinks if I can. And because there's a boy out there who hasn't spoken since the night I laughed at him. I still think about his words. Every night. Back then, I was working as a part-time in-home tutor. Mostly elementary-aged kids. Math. Reading. Nothing intense. Their parents liked that I was calm, patient, quiet. That's why I remember that house so clearly. It was a short-term job. 1 week. Summer break. A couple hours each evening. Easy money. I didn't think twice when the mother called me directly instead of going through the agency. Her voice sounded strained, tight, like she was forcing each word through her teeth. "My son doesn't talk much," she said, "but he listens." That should have meant something to me. I told myself I'd heard worse. The house sat at the edge of a wooded neighborhood. Big trees, long shadows even in daylight. The kind of place where sound doesn't travel far, where your footsteps feel louder than they should. The first time I walked up the driveway, I felt watched. Not in a dramatic way, just that low, nagging awareness at the base of my skull. Like someone standing just behind me, close enough that if I turned too fast, we'd collide. I didn't turn around. I should have listened to that feeling. Inside, the house smelled clean on the surface. Lemon cleaner, fresh laundry. But underneath it, there was something else. Damp, mildewy, old water trapped behind walls. The boy's name was Ethan. He was 8, thin, pale, big eyes that never stopped moving. He didn't smile when he met me. He didn't frown either. He just watched. The parents were polite but distant. The father barely made eye contact. The mother hovered in doorways, wringing her hands when she thought I wasn't looking. That was the first sign something was wrong. The sessions themselves were quiet. Too quiet. Ethan answered questions with nods or shrugs. He wrote neatly, carefully, like he was afraid of making mistakes. Sometimes I caught him staring at the ceiling, listening. I asked him once what he was looking at. He didn't answer. On the third night, while I was explaining fractions, the bathroom door at the end of the hall creaked open. No one had gone in there. I paused, waiting for footsteps, for a flush, for anything. Nothing came. The air felt colder after that, like a window had been opened somewhere upstairs. I told myself it was an old house. Houses make sounds. I was wrong. Halfway through the lesson, Ethan's pencil slipped from his fingers. It clattered loudly against the hardwood floor. He flinched like he'd been slapped. I bent to pick it up, and when I looked up, he was staring at me with a kind of urgency I hadn't seen before. "Don't use the upstairs bathroom," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. It sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced saying it without being heard. I laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. Adults laugh when children say strange things. It's a reflex. "Why not?" I asked gently. Ethan swallowed. His throat bobbed. "It listens," he said. That was the second sign. I should have stopped the session right there, packed up, made an excuse. Instead, I finished the lesson. When I stood to leave, the mother asked if I wanted to use the restroom before heading out. She gestured toward the stairs. I hesitated, just for a second. Ethan was watching me, his eyes wide, silent, pleading. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. I climbed the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight. The sound echoed longer than it should have. The hallway at the top felt narrow, constricting. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The bathroom door was already open. That didn't register until later. Inside, the room was warm, uncomfortably so. Steam clung to the mirror like someone had just taken a shower. But the tub was dry. The smell hit me next. Coppery, sharp, like cold metal left too long against skin. I stepped closer to the sink. That's when I saw the handprints. They were small, child-sized, pressed flat against the mirror, still wet, slowly sliding downward, leaving faint streaks behind. My reflection stared back at me through them, distorted and shaking. I froze. Something moved behind the shower curtain. Not a dramatic lurch, just a subtle shift. Fabric brushing against porcelain. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Right behind me. Every instinct in my body screamed run. I didn't scream. I didn't turn around. I bolted. I slammed into the hallway wall, nearly tripping over my own feet as I tore down the stairs. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might rupture. My hands were numb. My vision tunneled. The parents were standing at the bottom of the stairs. They knew. I saw it in their faces. The mother's eyes filled with tears. The father's jaw clenched like he was bracing for impact. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. "I'm leaving," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. They didn't stop me. Ethan stood behind them, silent, watching. I swear he mouthed the words, "Too late." I didn't sleep that night. The smell followed me home. That damp rot clung to my clothes, my hair. I scrubbed my hands until my skin cracked and bled. The next morning, the mother called. She told me everything in pieces. Broken sentences. Long pauses. A tenant had died in that bathroom years ago. A cousin. An accident, they said at first. A fall. A head injury. Later, they admitted it wasn't an accident. The mirror had been replaced 3 times. Ethan had found the body. After that night, he stopped speaking altogether. Doctors couldn't explain it. Therapists tried. Nothing worked. I quit tutoring after that. I avoid upstairs bathrooms. I avoid mirrors when I'm alone. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection unexpectedly, I see faint handprints fogging the glass. Fresh, wet, sliding. And I remember the boy who tried to warn me before it listened. My name is Aaron Patel. I'm 31 now. I live in a small rental outside Phoenix, Arizona. Single, quiet life. I work IT support during the day and take occasional babysitting jobs at night for families I already know. I didn't used to be afraid of cameras. Now I cover them when I'm alone. Tape, towels, anything within reach. I don't care how it looks. I don't care who laughs. I remember that night because it was the first time I felt watched in a way I couldn't explain away. Not anxiety. Not imagination. Something deliberate. If I had known what was coming, I would have walked out before I even took my shoes off. I was 26 then. Newly moved. Broke. Babysitting was easy money and usually uneventful. This job came from a coworker's sister. Nice neighborhood. 2 kids. One night. Simple. The parents greeted me with smiles that felt rehearsed. The house was modern. Clean. Cold tile floors that chilled my feet through my socks. The air smelled faintly like lemon cleaner and new electronics. Before they left, the dad insisted on showing me the security system. Full coverage, he said proudly. Cameras everywhere. Indoors and out. He pointed them out like decorations. Corners of the ceiling. Hallway. Living room. Even the kitchen. I smiled and nodded, pretending I wasn't uncomfortable. That was the first sign something was wrong. The kids, Lila and Mark, were already in pajamas. Quiet. Polite. They hugged their parents a little too tightly before they left. When the door closed, the house settled into a heavy silence. The kind that presses against your ears. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. The first hour passed normally. Homework. Snacks. A cartoon playing softly in the background. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling mindlessly. That's when I noticed it. The camera above the TV wasn't fixed anymore. It was angled slightly downward, toward me. I stared at it longer than I meant to. My skin prickled. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. I told myself it was motion activated. That's what cameras do. Still, I shifted on the couch. The camera moved. Slowly. Smoothly. Like someone gently nudging it. Tracking me. My stomach tightened. I laughed under my breath. Nervous. Forced. Get it together, I whispered to myself. That was the second sign. I stood up to grab a drink of water. As I crossed the room, I felt it again. That crawling sensation between my shoulder blades. I looked up. The camera turned. Not jerky. Not delayed. Intentional. I stopped walking. It stopped. The silence felt louder then. The cartoon's audio suddenly too quiet, like it was being swallowed by the room. I checked the kids. They were sitting on the floor, backs to me, completely still. Do your parents check the cameras a lot? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Lila shook her head without turning around. Not anymore. That didn't help. I pulled out the security app the parents had shown me earlier. Logged in. Checked active users. No one was logged in. No remote access. No movement alerts. My fingers trembled as I held the phone. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. When I sat back down, the camera zoomed. Just a little. Enough to make my breath hitch. I stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the tile. The sound echoed longer than it should have. "Kids," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "We're going to sit in the kitchen for a bit." The kitchen camera was already angled toward the doorway. Waiting. The temperature in the house dropped. I could feel it. Cold air licking at my ankles. My hands felt clammy, slick with sweat. As we moved, every camera we passed adjusted. One by one. Click. Whir. Soft mechanical sounds that set my teeth on edge. Tracking. Always tracking. Mark grabbed my hand. His palm was cold. "It does that," he whispered. "Does what?" I asked. "Follows." That was the third sign. I didn't wait anymore. I ushered them toward the front door, heart pounding so hard it blurred my vision. I didn't bother grabbing my bag. As I reached for the handle, every camera in the living room turned toward us at once. The sound was deafening in the silence. Motors humming, plastic shifting, like something waking up. The one above the door zoomed all the way in. I could see myself reflected in the lens. Small, distorted. Watched. I yanked the door open and shoved the kids outside. The night air hit us like a slap. Warm, dry, real. I slammed the door shut behind us and backed away. The cameras inside were still moving. I called the police with shaking hands. We waited on the curb. The kids huddled against me, silent. When the officers arrived, they searched the house, checked the system, pulled logs. Their faces changed when they found the access records. The system had been hacked weeks earlier. No traceable source. No IP. No explanation for the internal camera movement. The parents were hysterical when they returned. Apologetic. Terrified. They swore they'd never noticed anything. The cameras were removed the next day. I didn't babysit for months after that. Even now, years later, I feel it sometimes. That same pressure. That sense of being observed. In hotel rooms. In elevators. In my own apartment. Sometimes I swear I hear a faint mechanical whir behind me, even when there's nothing there. My name is Laura Bennett. I'm 34 now. I live in a quiet townhouse in a suburb outside Madison, Wisconsin. I work a stable office job. Normal hours. Predictable days. I go to bed early. I keep my phone on loud at night. I still check the clock every hour. That habit never left me. I remember that night because it was the last time I ever babysat. The last time I told myself everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. The last time I sat in someone else's house waiting for people who were never coming back. I was 22 then, college student, living paycheck to paycheck. Babysitting filled in the gaps when my campus job couldn't. I said yes to almost everything. I needed the money too badly to be picky. If I had known what was coming, I would have turned my phone off and stayed home. The house was in a newer development on the edge of town. Big homes, long driveways, no sidewalks, everything spaced too far apart. Quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Just empty. The parents greeted me warmly, a little rushed. The dad kept checking his watch. The mom kept smoothing imaginary wrinkles out of her blouse. They told me they'd be back by midnight, maybe a little after. Dinner anniversary. Nothing unusual. They kissed the kids goodnight even though it was barely 7. That should have meant something. The kids were already in pajamas. 2 of them. A boy and a girl. Both under 10. Polite. Sleepy. They hugged their parents tightly before they left. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And just like that, the house felt bigger. The first few hours were easy. Snacks. A movie. Teeth brushed. Lights off by 9. The kids fell asleep fast, curled in their beds like they trusted the world to stay the same while they rested. I stayed downstairs, scrolling through my phone, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. Around 11, the house started to feel colder. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed it. I pulled my sweater tighter around myself. The air felt stale, like it hadn't moved in a while. I checked the time. 11:47 p.m. I expected a text any minute. An apology. Running late. That kind of thing. Midnight came, then passed. 12:15.12:30. Nothing. I checked my phone. Full signal. No missed calls. No messages. I told myself they were just enjoying their night, that I was overthinking it. That was the first sign something was wrong. By 1 a.m., the silence had changed. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It felt heavy, pressed against my ears, like the house was holding its breath. I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, careful. I froze on the couch, heart kicking hard against my ribs. I listened closely. A floorboard creaked. Then another. I called the boy's name softly. No answer. I climbed the stairs with my phone light on, every sense tuned sharp. The hallway smelled faintly like old wood and dust. Both bedroom doors were closed. I opened them slowly. Both kids were asleep, exactly where I'd left them. I stood there longer than necessary, listening to their breathing. Steady, normal. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. As I turned back toward the stairs, I felt it, that feeling of being watched. Not from behind, from below. I hurried back downstairs and locked the front door without really thinking about it. My hands were shaking when I did. I checked the time again. 1:42 a.m. That was when I realized how cold it had gotten. My breath felt shallow. My skin prickled. The thermostat read the same as before, but the air felt wrong. Thin, empty. At 2 a.m. I called the parents. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't know what I'd say. The clock ticked loudly on the wall. Each second felt like it lasted too long. I checked on the kids again. Still asleep. I sat back on the couch, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the front door. At 3 a.m., the doorbell rang. Just once. Sharp. Loud. Too loud in the silence. I didn't move. My heart slammed so hard it made me dizzy. My mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed at me to stay exactly where I was. The doorbell rang again. Longer this time. I held my breath. Listened. No footsteps. No voices. Just the faint hum of the porch light outside. I told myself it was the parents. That something had happened to their phones. That I was being ridiculous. I wasn't. I stood up slowly and peered through the side window, careful not to cast a shadow. No one was there. The porch was empty. No car. No movement. Just darkness and the glow of the light. The smell hit me then. Damp. Earthy. Like wet leaves and rusted metal. The doorbell rang again. I backed away. I didn't answer. I locked myself in the living room and waited for the sun. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. I woke to soft light creeping through the windows and the sound of birds outside. Normal sounds. Morning sounds. The house felt warmer. For a moment, I almost convinced myself nothing had happened. Then I checked the clock. 6:18 a.m. Still no word from the parents. The kids woke up shortly after, confused and hungry. I made them cereal, smiled when they talked, pretended my hands weren't shaking as badly as they were. At 7, there was a knock at the door. Not the doorbell. A knock. Firm. Official. Police. They asked questions I couldn't answer. Where had the parents gone? When was the last time I saw them? Did they mention anything strange? They searched the house, the neighborhood, the surrounding roads. The parents were never found. No car, no bodies, no explanation. The case went cold fast. I gave my statement, over and over. Each time felt heavier, like I was confessing to something I couldn't name. I stopped babysitting after that. Years later, I still wake up at night and check the clock. I still count the hours. Still wait for midnight to pass. Sometimes, when it's quiet enough, I think about that doorbell. Who rang it? And why? My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 36 now. I live in a second-floor apartment in a building with thick steel doors and cameras on every landing. I still lock everything twice, sometimes 3 times. And even then, I don't really believe I'm safe. I still don't trust locked doors. They don't always mean safety. I'm telling this now because winter always brings it back. The smell of wet coats, the sound of zippers, that faint scrape of fabric moving when it shouldn't. I hear it in the middle of the night sometimes, and my body reacts before my mind does. My heart races. My breath goes shallow. My hands shake. Because years ago, when I was 21, I learned how easy it is for someone to already be inside. I was a college student then. Babysitting paid my rent. It was predictable, quiet, easy. Or at least it had always been. I took jobs last minute. Nights, weekends, holidays. I didn't ask many questions. I needed the money too badly to hesitate. If I had known what was coming, I would have stayed home that night. I would have let my phone ring. I would have ignored the knock. But I didn't. It was mid-January. One of those nights where the cold feels sharp, like it's cutting through your skin. Snow piled along the curbs. The sky low and gray even after dark. The house was in a quiet neighborhood, older but well-kept. Yellow porch light glowing through falling snow. The kind of place that looks safe. The kind of place you don't question. That was the first sign something was wrong. The parents were in a hurry. Not panicked, just rushed. The dad kept checking outside, like he was worried about the weather turning worse. The mom apologized 3 times for the mess even though the house was spotless. They told me they'd be back before midnight. Dinner downtown. Roads might be bad. Everything you need is here, the mom said, already halfway out the door. The kids hugged them goodnight and ran upstairs. Their laughter echoed down the hall, light and careless. The door closed. The lock clicked. And suddenly, it was just me and the house. I remember noticing the coat closet immediately. It was right by the front door, packed full. Heavy winter coats layered on top of each other. Scarves dangling. Gloves stuffed into pockets. The smell of cold air and damp fabric lingered around it. I don't know why it stood out to me. Maybe it didn't. Maybe my mind just went back there later, searching for signs I missed. The kids went to bed without a fight. Both asleep by 9. I checked on them twice. Watched their chests rise and fall. Listened to their soft breathing. Everything was normal. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. I settled on the couch with a blanket and my phone. The house creaked as it cooled, wood popping softly. The heater kicked on and off. Snow tapped faintly against the windows. Time passed slowly. Around 10:30, I heard a sound near the front door. A soft rustle. I paused my scrolling. Listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the coats settling. Heavy fabric does that sometimes. That was the second sign. At 11, the house felt colder. Not just temperature-wise. Emotionally, the air felt stale. Thick, like it hadn't moved in a while. I pulled the blanket tighter and glanced toward the hallway. That's when I heard it. A zipper. Slow, careful, controlled. Not the quick, careless sound of someone grabbing a jacket. This was deliberate. My stomach dropped. I held my breath, listening so hard my ears rang. My heart thudded in my chest, loud enough I was afraid it could be heard. The sound came again. Zip. Just a few inches this time. Every instinct screamed at me not to move, not to look, not to make a sound. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. I stood slowly, every muscle tight, and took one step toward the front door. The floor creaked under my foot. The zipper stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. Thick, heavy, pressing against my skull. I whispered, "Hello." My voice sounded thin, weak, no answer. I told myself it was nothing, that I was tired, that fear was playing tricks on me. That was my mistake. I reached for the closet door. My hand was shaking so badly I almost missed the knob. The metal felt ice cold against my palm. I opened it just a crack, just enough to see inside. An eye stared back at me, white, unblinking, too close. I didn't scream right away. My body locked up, frozen in disbelief. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. A man was standing inside the closet, breathing quietly, waiting. He lunged. The door flew open, coats exploding outward as he shoved through them. Fabric scraped across my face. The smell hit me all at once. Sweat, mildew, something sour underneath. I screamed then, loud, raw, animal. He grabbed my arm. His grip was crushing, fingers digging into my skin. I felt his breath on my face, hot and fast. I saw his eyes up close, wild, desperate, empty. The kids woke up screaming upstairs. Chaos erupted. I kicked, thrashed. My back slammed into the wall. Pain shot through my shoulder. I clawed at his face, my nails scraping skin. He cursed and shoved me away hard. I fell, hitting the floor, the impact knocking the air from my lungs. By the time I dragged myself up, he was already running. The front door slammed open. Cold air rushed in. Snow blew across the entryway. Then he was gone. I locked the door with shaking hands and collapsed against it, sobbing. My whole body trembled. My arm throbbed where he'd grabbed me. The kids were crying at the top of the stairs, terrified and confused. I called the police. My fingers slipped on the screen. I couldn't breathe properly. Words came out broken. They arrived fast. Lights flashing blue and red against the snow. Officers searched the house, checked every room, every closet. They found nothing. They caught him 2 blocks away, hiding behind a dumpster, covered in snow, wearing gloves that weren't his. The police told me later that he'd broken into the house earlier that evening. While the family was out, he'd hidden in the coat closet and waited for the parents to leave, waited for me to arrive, waited for the house to settle. I still think about that part. How long he stood there, breathing quietly, listening to the front door open, watching through the crack in the coats as I walked in, unaware. They asked me questions, over and over. I answered them all. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. The kids were okay. Physically, emotionally, I don't know. I wasn't. I had bruises on my arm for weeks, finger-shaped, yellowing, then fading. But the feeling stayed. The sense of being watched. The fear of enclosed spaces. The sound of zippers. I stopped babysitting alone after that. I stopped trusting that locked doors meant protection. I started checking closets whenever I enter a room. Even now, sometimes late at night when everything is quiet, I swear I hear it. Zip. Slow. Careful. Coming from somewhere behind me. And I remember how close he was before I knew he was there. My name is Hannah Collins. I'm 33 now. I live alone in a small rental on the edge of a city where houses are close enough that I can hear other people living their lives. Doors, cars, voices, proof that I'm not isolated. I need that, because when I was 20, I spent one night in a house that knew my name. And ever since then, hearing it spoken unexpectedly makes my chest lock up like I've forgotten how to breathe. I still jump when someone says it from behind me. Let me explain. Back then, I was a college sophomore trying to survive on scholarships and part-time work. Babysitting was easy money, especially the kind of job where parents left early and kids went to bed without a fight. This one paid well. Cash. One night. Rural address. If I had known what was coming, I would have ignored the message, or at least trusted the feeling that crawled up my spine when I saw how far out it was. The house sat at the end of a narrow road surrounded by trees and fields. No neighbors close enough to see their lights. No street lamps. Just darkness pressing in from every direction. My headlights cut through fog that hugged the ground like it didn't want to let go. That was the first sign something was wrong. The parents greeted me warmly but quickly. Too quickly. Like they were eager to be gone. They mentioned a family event in town. No details. Just smiles stretched thin at the edges. The kids were already in pajamas. Asleep upstairs. I didn't even meet them awake. That should have bothered me. The mother handed me a piece of paper with emergency numbers written in careful, looping handwriting. Her hand lingered when she passed it to me. Cold. Damp. The house makes noises, she said casually, already grabbing her coat. It's old. I smiled, nodded, pretended I hadn't felt that chill. They left before the sun fully dipped below the horizon. The door closed behind them with a dull, final sound that echoed through the house longer than it should have. And then it was just me. The house smelled like old wood and dust. Not dirty, just aged. The kind of smell that seeps into your clothes without you noticing. The air felt thick, like it hadn't circulated properly in years. I walked through the downstairs rooms turning on lights. Each switch clicked loudly. Too loudly. The bulbs flickered before settling into a weak glow. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. By 8:30, the house had settled into its nighttime rhythm. Creaks, soft pops, the distant whistle of wind sliding through gaps in the siding. Normal sounds. Sounds I'd heard in plenty of older houses before. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being listened to. Not watched. Listened to. I sat on the couch with a blanket and the TV on low, more for background noise than entertainment. Every so often, I'd glance down the hallway leading to the stairs. The shadows there seemed deeper, thicker, like light avoided that space on purpose. Around 9, I heard it. Hannah. My name. Soft, almost affectionate. I froze. The sound came from the hallway. I stared at the dark space between the walls, my heart beginning to race. I laughed under my breath, nervous and embarrassed with myself. "It's just the TV," I whispered. I muted it. The house fell into silence so complete it rang in my ears. I could hear my own breathing. Slow, uneven. "Hannah." Again. Closer. The sound wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It sounded like someone standing just out of sight, speaking carefully so they wouldn't wake the kids. My skin prickled. Goosebumps raced up my arms. That was the second sign. I stood up, every movement deliberate. "Hello," I called out, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. No answer. The air felt colder suddenly, like someone had opened a door to winter somewhere inside the walls. My breath fogged faintly. I walked the hallway, checked the bathroom, the laundry room, the kitchen. Every room felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like furniture had been shifted just slightly off where it belonged. I checked the stairs. Halfway up, I paused. The smell changed. Upstairs smelled damp, mildew, something metallic underneath it, like old pipes and something else I didn't want to identify. I checked the kids' rooms, both asleep, peaceful. Their chests rose and fell steadily, warm, alive. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. As I turned to leave, I heard my name again. Hannah. This time it came from behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. No one was there. The hallway light flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. My heart slammed so hard it made my vision blur. I backed into the wall, pressing my palms against the cool paint like it could ground me. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. The whisper came again. Softer, familiar, almost comforting. "Hannah, come here." It sounded like my mother's voice. That was when panic finally broke through. I ran. I didn't grab my shoes. I didn't grab my phone charger. I bolted down the stairs, my bare feet slapping against cold wood, my breath coming in sharp, painful gasps. The front door felt too far away. The hallway stretched. The walls seemed to lean inward. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, not chasing, following. I yanked the door open and ran into the night, gravel biting into my feet, cold air tearing through my lungs. I didn't stop until I was inside my car, doors locked, engine running, headlights blasting the house. The house looked different then, darker. The windows reflected nothing, just black. I waited there until sunrise, shivering, heart still racing, eyes never leaving the front door. It never opened. When the parents returned, they found me asleep in the driver's seat, exhausted, pale, barefoot. I tried to explain. I stumbled over words, apologized, cried. They exchanged a look I'll never forget. The mother sighed. "We should have told you." The house, she said, had a history, multiple owners, multiple tragedies, people who heard things, voices, names, always names. They said it learned. They said it liked being acknowledged. They said they forgot to mention it. I never went back. Years have passed. I've built a life that feels safe, predictable, controlled. But sometimes, when I'm alone, when the world is quiet enough, I hear it. Hannah. Not loud, not angry, just familiar, and it never sounds friendly. My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 32 now. I live in a third-floor apartment with no basement, no crawl space, and no stairs that descend into darkness. I chose it that way on purpose. I still avoid houses with basements, especially unfinished ones. I didn't always used to think like this. When I was 19, I was a college freshman trying to prove I was independent. Babysitting paid well, especially overnight jobs, especially during storms when parents were desperate to leave and promised extra cash for just a few hours. That's why I remember that night so clearly. Not because it was dramatic at first, but because everything about it felt normal enough that I ignored my instincts. If I had known what was coming, I would have said no, that I should have listened to that feeling. That was the first sign something was wrong. The house was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. Tree-lined streets, long driveways, the kind of place where sound gets swallowed by distance. The sky was already bruised with storm clouds when I arrived. Thick, heavy air pressing down on everything. The parents were late, rushed. The father barely looked at me when he handed over instructions. The mother smiled too much. Her hands shook as she adjusted her purse strap. 2 boys, brothers, 7 and 9, well-behaved. Asleep by 9. They told me the power sometimes flickered during storms. They told me not to worry. The breaker's in the basement, the father said, already opening the door. If it goes out, just flip it back on. He said it like it was nothing. The house smelled clean upstairs. Lemon cleaner, warm laundry, something comforting. The boys were already in pajamas, curled under blankets, breathing slow and deep. I checked on them twice before the parents left. The door closed behind them with a hollow thud that echoed longer than it should have. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. The storm hit fast. Wind rattled the windows. Rain hammered the roof like handfuls of gravel being thrown again and again. The lights flickered once, twice, then everything went dark. Silence rushed in, thick and heavy, broken only by the storm outside and my own breathing. I stood there in the living room, phone flashlight on, heart beating a little faster than it should have. Power outages weren't scary. Not really. I dealt with them before. Still, something about the house felt wrong, like it had exhaled when the lights went out. I waited a minute, then another. Nothing came back on. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. Old, plastic. The beam weak but better than nothing. I told myself to be brave. I told myself I was overreacting. That should have been my warning. The basement door was off the kitchen. Narrow, wooden, painted white at some point, but the paint was peeling near the handle. The air around it felt colder than the rest of the house. I hesitated with my hand hovering inches away. I could smell it even before opening the door. Damp, concrete, mildew, old water. The door creaked as it opened, the sound sharp and loud in the quiet house. Cold air rushed up the stairs, crawling under my jeans, raising goosebumps along my legs. The beam of the flashlight cut into the darkness below. The stairs were wooden, steep, unfinished, no railing. Each step groaned under my weight. Halfway down, the smell intensified. Wet cardboard, rust, something organic. Something that reminded me of basements I'd seen on crime shows, not family homes. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. The basement opened into a wide concrete space. Low ceiling, exposed beams, boxes stacked along the walls. Old furniture covered in plastic sheets that whispered softly when the air moved. The breaker box was on the far wall. I took a step forward. That's when I heard it. A sound behind me. Not footsteps. A wet shuffle. Slow, careful. My body locked up instantly. Every muscle tightened. My skin prickled like static electricity was crawling across it. I held my breath and listened. There it was again. Breathing. Not mine. It was low, shallow, close enough that I could hear moisture in it, like air moving through a congested chest. The flashlight flickered. Once, twice. I told myself it was the storm, pipes, the house settling. But deep down I knew that was the moment everything changed. I turned slowly, my hands trembling so badly the flashlight beam bounced wildly across the room. Shadows stretched and collapsed with every movement of the light. In the corner, near a stack of boxes, something shifted. It wasn't fast. It wasn't sudden. It stood up, too tall to be a kid. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling downstairs. The shape was wrong. Long, narrow, bent slightly at the shoulders like it wasn't used to standing fully upright. The light caught part of a face. Eyes, reflective, unblinking. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember thinking. I just ran. My feet slipped on the stairs. My shoulder slammed into the wall. I dropped the flashlight and didn't look back. I could hear it behind me now. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not chasing. Following. I burst into the kitchen and slammed the basement door shut, locking it with shaking hands. My chest burned. My vision blurred at the edges. I ran upstairs 2 steps at a time. The boys were awake now, sitting up in bed, confused, scared. I didn't explain. I grabbed them both and dragged them into the bathroom at the end of the hall, locked the door, turned off the lights, pulled them into the bathtub and held my hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. The house went quiet, too quiet. Then I heard it upstairs. Footsteps, slow, patient, heavy enough to make the floorboards creak. They stopped outside the bathroom door. Something scratched the wood. Long nails. Testing. Curious. The boys were shaking against me. I could feel their hearts racing through their pajamas. I whispered for them to be quiet. Over and over. The door handle moved. Just a little. I thought we were going to die there. I really did. I thought this was how it ended. In a stranger's house. In a bathroom that smelled like bleach and fear. Then the lights snapped back on. Every room. All at once. The scratching stopped. The footsteps disappeared. Silence flooded the house so completely it rang. I waited. I don't know how long. My arms ached from holding the boys too tightly. My throat was raw from breathing too shallow. Eventually, I unlocked the door. Nothing was there. The parents came home to police lights and a shaking babysitter who couldn't stop crying. The boys clung to their mother. The father wouldn't meet my eyes. Police searched the basement. They found bedding, old food containers, empty water bottles, a crude sleeping area behind stacked boxes. Someone had been living down there. For how long, they couldn't say. The parents never told me. They said they thought he'd left. They said they didn't think he'd come back. They said they didn't want to scare anyone. I still smell damp concrete in my nightmares. Sometimes, when I wake up sweating, I swear I can hear breathing behind me. Slow, wet, patient, waiting for the lights to go out again. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 now. I live alone in a small apartment above a bakery where the doors lock automatically and the walls are thin enough that I can hear other people breathing at night. I chose that place on purpose. I still triple-check addresses before I agree to babysit. I didn't that night. Back then, I was 20, a sophomore in college. Exhausted all the time, desperate for money. Babysitting was easy, predictable. You show up, make sure the kid eats, watch TV, wait for the parents to come home. That's why this still bothers me. Because nothing about that night should have stood out. And yet, I remember every second of it like my body knew something my brain refused to accept. If I had known what was coming, I would have turned around the moment I pulled up. I should have listened to that feeling. That was the first sign something was wrong. The message said 1 child, 7 years old. Quiet neighborhood. Parents out until midnight. Easy money. The house sat at the end of a short cul-de-sac. All the other homes were dark and spaced far apart. No streetlights close by. Just moonlight and shadows stretching across the driveway. I remember thinking the place felt unfinished somehow, like it had been placed there instead of built. The front door was unlocked when I arrived. I hesitated with my hand on the knob. That little spike of unease pressed into my chest. Parents usually unlock doors for babysitters, sure, but they usually told you first. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. Inside, the house smelled faintly of old wood and something metallic. Not rust exactly. Colder than that. The lights were on, but they didn't feel warm. More like they were illuminating things instead of comforting them. "Hello," I called out. A boy came into view from the hallway. He matched the description perfectly. Brown hair, skinny, nervous smile. He looked relieved to see me. My parents said you'd be here, he said. Then I noticed the other child. He was standing at the end of the hallway, half hidden by shadow. Smaller, paler, too still. His clothes looked outdated somehow, like hand-me-downs from another decade. He didn't wave. He didn't blink. He just stared at me. That must be your brother, I said, forcing a smile. The older boy didn't look at him. His eyes dropped to the floor. He's not supposed to be here yet, he said quietly. I laughed. Too quickly. My hands were already damp. I texted the parents. Hey, I'm here. Just checking. Did you mean 2 kids tonight? No reply. The quiet one tilted his head slightly. The movement was slow, curious, like he was studying how I worked. I should have left then. I should have trusted my body instead of my brain. The evening dragged. The older boy stayed close to me, talking nonstop about school, cartoons, anything to avoid silence. The quiet child drifted from room to room, always just inside my peripheral vision. Every time I looked directly at him, the lights flickered. Not fully off, just a stutter, like the house itself was blinking. By 9, the air felt wrong, heavy, pressurized, like the moments before a thunderclap. The temperature dropped even though the heater was on. I rubbed my arms, trying to warm up. The quiet child started standing in corners. Not playing. Not sitting. Just standing. Watching. I checked the time. 9:47 p.m. I tried the parents again. No response. The older boy's voice dropped when he spoke next. He shows up sometimes, he whispered. When the house is open. My stomach tightened. What do you mean, open? I asked. He shrugged. Unlocked. I laughed again. I hated myself for it. That's not funny. He didn't smile. 10, I decided to leave. I didn't care about the money anymore. I told the older boy to grab his shoes. That's when the quiet child smiled. It was too wide, too practiced, like he'd been waiting for the moment he was allowed to. Do you want to stay forever? He asked. His voice sounded like it came from somewhere deeper than his mouth, like it echoed before it reached me. I grabbed my bag and went for the door. It wouldn't open. The handle was ice cold. My fingers slipped. I tried again. Harder. Locked. Behind me, I could hear breathing that didn't match either child. Slow. Steady. Right behind my ear. The lights flickered violently now. The walls seemed closer. The smell of old wood intensified, mixed with something sour. Rotting. I turned around. The quiet child was inches from me. His eyes were wrong. Too dark. Too empty. Like holes punched through his face. I live here, he said softly. You let me in. The older boy was crying now. Hands over his ears. The front door flew open suddenly, slamming against the wall so hard the frame cracked. The parents rushed in, faces pale, eyes wild. What did you do? The mother screamed. Why would you let him inside? I didn't understand. I couldn't speak. I just stared as the quiet child faded backward into the hallway, his smile lingering longer than the rest of him. There's only one child, the father said, his voice breaking. The house felt warmer instantly. The pressure lifted. The smell faded. Police came. Questions were asked. Explanations were weak. I quit babysitting for a year after that. Even now, sometimes when I walk into an empty room, I feel it. That same pressure. That sense of being noticed. And I never trust houses that unlock themselves. My name is Lauren Whitfield. I'm 34 now. I live in a narrow townhouse in a city where sirens never really stop. And I sleep with a fan on even in winter because silence makes my skin crawl. I still can't listen to white noise without my chest tightening. It reminds me of breathing. Back then, I was 22, still in college, still thinking babysitting was harmless, still believing that bad things only happened to people who ignored obvious danger. That night taught me how wrong I was. If I had known what was coming, I would have said no. That I should have listened to that feeling. That was the first sign something was wrong. The house was new, modern, clean lines and glass and brushed steel. The kind of place that smells like paint and money. The parents were proud of it. They walked me through every room like it was a museum exhibit. Cameras everywhere, corners of the ceilings, hallways, nursery, living room, even the back door. They showed me the baby monitor last. A sleek tablet mounted to the wall. "It's super sensitive," the dad said, laughing. "Picks up everything." I smiled, nodded, pretended I was impressed. Inside, something tightened. I was watching twins, 8 months old. Sleeping through the night, they said. Easy job. Midnight pickup. The parents left at 7. The house settled around me in a way that felt intentional. The lights hummed softly. The air conditioning whispered through vents like it was trying not to be heard. Too quiet. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. The first few hours passed slowly. I folded baby clothes, scrolled my phone, checked the monitor more than I needed to. The twins slept side by side, chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. That should have comforted me. Instead, I kept noticing the cameras. The tiny red lights, always on. Around 11, the house felt colder. Not temperature-wise, something else. Like the air had weight, like walking through fog you couldn't see. The monitor crackled for the first time just after midnight. A soft burst of static. I glanced at the screen. The twins stirred, then settled. I told myself it was interference. Old wiring. Too many devices. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Too close. Not the shallow breath of sleeping babies. This was deliberate. Measured. Like someone standing inches from the mic, inhaling through their mouth. My scalp prickled. Goosebumps rippled down my arms. I leaned closer to the screen, heart thudding in my ears. The breathing continued. I muted the monitor. Silence. I laughed under my breath. Nervous. Embarrassed. Get it together, I whispered to myself. I unmuted it. The breathing came back instantly. That was the first time fear became physical. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly across the floor. The sound echoed. Too loud. I hated it. I went upstairs to the nursery. The twins were asleep. Peaceful. Warm. The room smelled like baby powder and clean laundry. No shadows where they shouldn't be. No movement. The closet door was closed. I stood there longer than necessary, listening. Nothing but my own breathing now. Shaky. Uneven. I told myself monitors pick up interference. Radios. Phones. Anything. I went back downstairs. The breathing followed me. It started low. Barely audible. Then louder. Like it was adjusting, tuning itself to me. The monitor crackled with each step I took, matching my pace. My hands trembled. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt in that glass-heavy house. Then the voice came. My name. Not through the air. Through the monitor. Lauren. Soft. Intimate. Like it had practiced. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs locked. My mouth went dry. The smell of cold metal filled my nose, sharp and unfamiliar. That was the first sign something was wrong. I whispered aloud, years later realizing how ridiculous it sounded even then. I bolted upstairs. The nursery door was open. I knew it had been closed. Cold air spilled out like breath from a freezer. The smell hit me immediately. Rotting fabric, sweat, something old and sour, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. The closet door was wide open. I didn't remember opening it. I backed into the room, grabbed the twins from their cribs with shaking hands, and locked myself inside the bathroom connected to the nursery. I slid down against the door, clutching them to my chest, their warmth the only thing grounding me. The monitor, still strapped to my wrist, crackled. Breathing. Closer now. I called the parents. My fingers slipped on the screen. Once. Twice. No answer. The breathing turned into whispering. Words I couldn't fully make out. My name again. Over and over. Like a test. The door handle rattled. Once. Then again. Slow. Patient. I pressed my forehead against the cool tile and prayed. I don't even know to who. The twins started crying. Loud. Sharp. Panicked. The handle stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and suffocating. Then footsteps. Above us. In the ceiling. Crawling. The sound of fabric scraping against wood. Nails dragging. Something shifting its weight carefully, deliberately. Police lights cut through the windows an hour later. I don't remember calling them. I don't remember unlocking the door. I remember hands pulling me up. Voices telling me I was safe. They found him in the crawl space. A man. Dirty. Thin. Smiling. He'd been there for weeks. Listening. Watching. Using the cameras. They said I was lucky. The parents cried. Apologized. Told me they'd noticed things missing but thought they were misplacing them. Told me the monitor had been glitching for days. I never babysat again. Even now, sometimes when my phone glitches or a speaker crackles, my body reacts before my mind does. My heart races. My breath shortens. Because sometimes in the static I swear I hear breathing. And I never sleep with doors open anymore. My name is Hannah Lowe. I'm 31 now. I live alone in a small apartment above a bakery that smells like sugar and burnt bread every morning. I keep the lights on at night. All of them. And I don't babysit past midnight. That part of my life ended years ago. Not because I grew out of it. Because something followed me out of that house. If I had known what was coming, I wouldn't have taken the job. That I should have listened to that feeling. That was the first sign something was wrong. I was 20, broke, exhausted, and desperate to make rent. Babysitting had always been easy money. Quiet houses, sleeping kids, long hours of sitting still with my thoughts. I didn't think too much about it back then. This job came through a local board. One child, 6 years old, older house near the woods. The mom worked night shifts at a hospital. Midnight to 7 a.m. She warned me the house creaked. Old plumbing, old bones. I smiled and said that was fine. It wasn't. The house sat at the end of a narrow road where streetlights stopped trying. Trees crowded close, branches leaning in like they were listening. The air smelled damp, earthy, like soil after rain. I noticed it the second I stepped out of my car. The girl answered the door before her mom could. Small, pale, barefoot. She stared at me like she was memorizing my face. That should have been my first warning. Her name was Lily. She didn't smile, just watched. The mom rushed around, tired and apologetic, explaining routines, snacks, bedtime, normal things. She kissed Lily's head, grabbed her bag, and left. The door closed behind her with a heavy sound. Final, like something sealing. The house felt larger after that. We watched cartoons. Lily sat curled at the far end of the couch, knees to her chest, eyes flicking toward the hallway more than the TV. I tried to engage her, asked about school, friends, favorite shows, short answers, one word, sometimes just a shrug. Then she asked it, "What time do you leave?" I glanced at the clock. "Your mom gets home around 7. She nodded slowly, too slowly. 5 minutes later, she asked again, "What time do you leave?" I laughed it off. Kids repeat things, I told myself. It's fine. I wasn't fine. She asked again while I poured juice. Again while I cut apple slices. Again while I tucked her in. Each time quieter. Each time more serious. The house grew colder as the night went on. Not the thermostat. Something else. The air thickened. My skin prickled. I kept feeling like I was being watched from somewhere I couldn't see. I should have listened to that feeling. After Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table scrolling my phone. The silence pressed on my ears. No traffic. No wind. Just the low hum of the fridge and the faint ticking of a clock I hadn't noticed before. Then I heard footsteps. Upstairs. Slow. Careful. Too heavy to be Lily. I froze, breath caught halfway in. The smell hit me next. Damp wood, mildew, something metallic underneath. Like cold iron. "Lily," I called. No answer. I told myself it was the house settling. Pipes. Old beams. I stood anyway, heart hammering, and walked toward the stairs. Halfway up, Lily appeared behind me. I hadn't heard her door open. She stood in the hallway, eyes wide, voice barely a breath. "He waits until you leave." The words sank into me slowly, like cold water. What? I whispered. She shook her head, backing away. He doesn't like when grown-ups stay. That was my second warning. I went into her room with her, checked under the bed, closet, windows locked, everything normal. Too normal. The smell lingered though, stronger now. I tucked her back in and sat on the edge of the bed longer than necessary. My hands were shaking. She watched me like she was afraid to blink. "I'll be right here," I said. I told myself I meant it. Downstairs, the back door was open. Cold air poured in, crawling across the floor and up my legs. The curtains moved slowly, like something had just passed through them. Outside, I heard dragging, wood scraping against wood. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from her mom. "Why did you unlock the back door?" I hadn't. My chest tightened. I locked the door and slid the deadbolt into place, hands trembling so hard I almost dropped my phone. Another sound came from the deck. A low shuffle. Breathing. I grabbed Lily from her bed. She didn't resist, like she'd been waiting. We ran to my car barefoot, pajamas flapping, breath fogging in the cold air. I locked us inside and called the police, hands slick with sweat. We watched the house from the driveway. One light flicked on upstairs. Then another. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Police came, searched the woods, the house, the crawl space, found nothing. They said maybe it was an animal, maybe stress, maybe imagination. Lily didn't say another word that night. She moved away a month later. I stopped babysitting after that. But sometimes, late at night, when the clock hits midnight, I still feel watched. I still wonder who she was protecting me from, and why he knew my schedule. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 33 now. I live in a small rental on a street that's always louder than it should be. Cars passing, neighbors arguing, dogs barking at nothing. I like the noise. Keeps my thoughts from drifting back to that night. I still flinch when a car idles outside my window too long. Let me back up. I was 19 then, first year of college. Babysitting was how I paid for books, gas, food, little pieces of independence I wasn't ready to give up. I told myself I was responsible, careful, smart enough to handle a quiet night with sleeping kids. If I had known what was coming, I would have trusted my instincts that I should have listened to that feeling. That was the first sign something was wrong. The neighborhood looked like a catalog photo. Every house the same size, same color palettes, same trimmed lawns and identical mailboxes. The kind of place where nothing bad is supposed to happen because nothing ever looks out of place. The parents were friendly, polite. The father shook my hand. The mother smiled too tightly. They told me the kids would be asleep by 9. Easy night. Movie on the couch. Midnight pickup at the latest. Text us if you need anything, the father said. I'll text when we're close. That detail stuck with me later. The kids went down without a fight. Their breathing settled into that soft, even rhythm that fills a house and somehow makes it feel emptier at the same time. I turned off lights room by room until only the living room lamp glowed. The house felt too big once everything went quiet. Every sound echoed. The fridge hummed. The heater clicked on and off with sharp little pops. Floorboards creaked even when I wasn't moving. I told myself it was normal. Old house sounds. Nothing sinister. Still, I kept checking the driveway. I don't know why. The parents weren't due back for hours. But something about the front of the house pulled my attention. The large window. The way the streetlight outside flickered faintly, casting shadows that stretched and shrank with every passing car. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. Around 11, headlights swept across the living room wall. Bright, sudden. They stopped. The engine stayed on. I froze, phone halfway to my face, heart thudding so loudly I was sure the kids upstairs would wake up. I waited for the headlights to move again, to fade, to pass like all the others had. They didn't. I laughed softly to myself, nervous, embarrassed. It's just a neighbor, I whispered. You're being ridiculous. That should have been my first warning. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The engine idled steadily. A low, constant vibration that I could feel through the floor more than hear. My skin prickled. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. I stood and peeked through the edge of the curtain, careful not to expose myself fully. The car sat at the curb. Dark, older model. I couldn't make out the driver. The headlights washed the house in white light, flattening everything, making the familiar look strange and exposed. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Slow, careful. I stepped back from the window, pulse racing, breath shallow. The smell of the house changed. Stale air, old carpet, something metallic from the heater vents. My mouth went dry. Then came the knock. Not loud, polite. 3 soft taps. I didn't move. Another knock, slightly firmer. I swallowed hard and called out, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. Who is it? There was a pause, just long enough to feel deliberate. Then a man's voice answered. He said the father's name. Wrong, just slightly wrong. A vowel off, an extra syllable that didn't belong. My stomach dropped so fast it made me dizzy. I'm here to pick up my kids, he said. I backed away from the door, every instinct screaming at me to run, to hide, to do something. But my legs felt like they were sinking into the carpet. I'm watching them tonight, I said louder now. I need you to call their parents. Silence, then breathing. I could hear it through the door. Slow, controlled, like he was right up against it, listening to me listen to him. He knocked again, harder. The door rattled in its frame. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and violent. Upstairs, one of the kids stirred. A small noise, then quiet again. I fumbled for my phone and called the parents. It rang once, twice, then the line went dead. No voicemail, no ring, just silence. The man laughed softly on the other side of the door. Not amused, not angry, almost patient. I know you're in there, he said. They said you'd be alone. My chest tightened. Cold spread through me, starting at my hands and crawling inward. I realized I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. How do you know their names? I asked. I don't know why I asked. Maybe I needed him to answer, to make it real. Another pause, then footsteps, retreating. The engine outside revved slightly. The headlights shifted, sweeping across the house one last time before pulling away. I collapsed onto the floor, back against the wall, gasping for air like I'd been underwater. My hands smelled like old wood and sweat. I stayed there long after the car disappeared, listening to the house breathe around me. The parents arrived an hour later. They were confused, alarmed. The father checked the locks. The mother hugged her kids too tightly. When I told them what happened, their faces changed. They said no one else should have known their names. No one. Police came, took a report, asked questions I couldn't answer. They never found the car, never found the man. I quit babysitting not long after. Even now, years later, when headlights stop outside my window, my body reacts before my mind does. My heart races. My breath shortens. I check locks that are already locked. Because sometimes, I still see headlights stop. And I never answer the door.